Well, it's State of the Union Day, and this is hands down, by far, the most important State of the Union address that President Trump has ever given. It could be the most important State of the Union address of most of our lifetimes because he is faced with, as he was in his first term, he is faced with a media and a lying Democrat Party that refused to acknowledge his extremely productive first year. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you he did everything right. He did a lot of things right, though. We're talking about truly, legitimately sealing the border. We're talking about promoting a deportation plan that has been pretty effective. Not as effective as I think it should have been, but effective enough. He's brought peace to many parts of the world, including what, eight peace plans already in place, working on solving the issue in Ukraine, working on solving the issue with Iran. I mean, he's done fantastic, and this is, of course, a midterm year, and the trend has always been that during the midterms, whoever the sitting president is, his party has the first 2 years to get things done, and then after that, they're toast. They either lose one, the House, the Senate, or both after the midterms, and that's something that we desperately need to avoid. Democrats, if they are able to get in there, well, impeachment will be the least of our concerns. That will be a concern, but there will be other challenges, including a judiciary that, let's face it, there's a good chance that he could replace two, if not three, Supreme Court justices. There's the rest of the judiciary that needs to be fixed, and he's going to need Republicans to retain control of the Senate in order to do that. Now, chances are good that that will happen either way, but the House is another story altogether, and I just can't imagine having Hakeem Jeffries as Speaker of the House. That would be absolutely disastrous. It would be just horrible. And keep in mind, I wasn't saying these things back in 2018. I expected that they would lose, because they needed to. Don't forget, this was the Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell days. John Thune isn't much better than McConnell, but I would say that Mike Johnson, for all of his follies, for all of his sort of milquetoastness, he has been far better than Paul Ryan, better than Kevin McCarthy, better than John Boehner, better than his predecessors. I would say quite a bit better. Not perfect, again, not even good. I would say he's been about average. Not average for for what we've seen in that position for the last few decades, but at least average as far as he's been okay. Whatever. I still want to keep him instead of Hakeem Jeffries. But the most important aspect of this State of the Union address, the focus is going to be on the economy, but there is one thing that he has to drive home, and that is voter integrity. The Save America Act, this is his opportunity to really pitch it to the people, to get the people to finally understand that no, it's not racist. As a matter of fact, it's racist to say, oh, we can't have voter ID because minorities are going to be too sorely affected, or women won't, they can't, what are they going to do? How are they going to vote if the Save America Act passes? It's going to require paperwork just like every other established nation in the world. Crazy, right? The Save America Act has to pass. It has to pass quickly. And in order to do it, because apparently there's not enough Republicans to with the backbone to make it happen, in the Senate at least, it's going to be up to President Trump to hammer it in a way so that the people will hammer their senators. It's extremely important. We're sitting on an 80-20 issue here, and we're doing nothing about it. I mean, we got at least 50 votes, plus J.D. Vance, a talking filibuster, which, to be clear, is just, I mean, they keep saying, oh, there's the talking filibuster, and then it's just the filibuster. That's how the filibuster is always supposed to have worked. They made it more convenient, because senators suck, generally speaking. So we'll keep an eye. Again, they're going to hammer the economy, which they should. That's the important part. Is in a midterm election year, you want to make sure that people understand that the economy is better than it was, and it's going to get better over the next year, and it should get better after that if the Republicans are able to retain control of the House and the Senate. So That is the message. I get it. On today's episode of the JD Rucker Show, I've got three relatively long segments. I'll be talking about Los Angeles, the debacle that it has become. And it really has become a total debacle, even worse than, I mean, we lived there for a little while, and it was bad back then. That was a decade ago. Now it's just a disaster. Also be talking about the opportunity that we have. There is a distinct opportunity for Republicans. It's going to sound crazy, but there's a chance that Republicans could actually win the governorship of California if certain things happen, and I will detail the strategy for those things to happen. It's not just the strategy for the Republican Party in California. It's really, more importantly, a strategy for the people to make sure that this happens. So make sure to listen to that segment. And then on a segment of The Late Prepper, we'll be talking about something very important that often gets missed in a lot of people's preparedness plan, and that is soap. Hygiene items are extremely important, and I don't think nearly enough attention is paid to them. So we will dive into that all on today's episode of The JD Rucker Show. Gold and silver are definitely hot right now. Now, before you go out and you buy a bunch of numismatics or collectible coins or whatever, do one of those gold IRAs, you should know the truth about physical precious metals. And if you are considering learning the truth, you are considering getting gold and silver, whether it's going to be through cash purchase or a rollover of your retirement account, the best place to do that is to go to jdrucker.com/gold, jdrucker.com/gold. That will just take you to advisorbullion.com, when you can talk to my good friend Ira over there. He'll take care of you. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, my friends. Here in California, we could possibly have a Republican governor. And I'm not talking about just having some amazing candidate who is so much better than the Democrat candidates. You can always have that and still lose because it's California. But this time, the math might actually work in favor of the Republicans. We have to take advantage of it. We have to capitalize on this, and I'm going to discuss how that happens on this segment of the Conservative Playbook. When I say it's been a long time since we've had a Republican governor, I don't actually count Arnold Schwarzenegger as a Republican. I know he wasn't a Democrat per se, and I know that he had some positives, I guess. But for the most part, he was really just a moderate Democrat, which makes him the equivalent of a Republican out here in California, at least amongst those in Sacramento. There are plenty of, just to dispel any rumors, there are plenty of conservative Americans out here in California. But unfortunately, a lot of them left. They just got sick of it. I myself have considered leaving strongly. I'm actually stuck out here for certain familial reasons, but once that situation changes, Lord willing, I will be able to leave. But I might not. Who knows? Maybe I'll stay and fight the good fight. It might not be broken after all. Now, California has what's called a jungle primary, right? The primary you don't get to pick a Republican and a Democrat. You get to pick from everybody. And whoever the top two vote getters are, those are the two that will face off in the general election. Well, currently, as you know, a combination of circumstances makes it to where the top two current people, according to the latest polls, are Steve Hilton and Chad Bianco, both of whom are Republicans. I've actually spoken to Mr. Hilton, had him on my show, I don't know, about probably 4 or 5 months ago. Very pleasant chap, very British sounding, but he is an American. He was a Fox News host for a while, and now he's trying to fix California. And of course, Bianco's a sheriff. He's got a lot of credentials behind him. And I'm just going to say it up front before it spills out in my tenure. I'm not super pumped about either. I guess between the two, I sort of prefer Hilton, but they're not exactly like staunch constitutional conservative MAGA patriots, make America great again, make America first, whatever. No, they're moderate Republicans. Well, if they were running in Texas, I probably wouldn't support them. But out here in California, if you're, I guess more conservative than everybody else, and that makes you a Republican. And I would say that both of them are better than Schwarzenegger. So there's that. The reason that they have such a good opportunity here, there's a few reasons, but the biggest reason is because the Democrats have arguably the most uninspiring slate of candidates you could possibly imagine. I'm not going to talk about the lesser candidates yet. We'll just focus on the top three right now, which are Tom Steyer. He's a billionaire. He ran in a primary back in 2020. He's rich. And that's pretty much all he is. I mean, that's the only thing about him that even makes him a player. He's not a guy that you're like, oh my gosh, we got to get behind this guy because he's so inspiring. Even if you are a Democrat or a radical leftist, he's kind of a, I don't know, just he's like really bland soup. That's the best description of him. But clocking in above him is Katie Porter. Who is just a disaster. I mean, this lady, if you haven't seen or heard any of her debacle interviews from last year, she was, we'll just say, seemed very incapable of handling any form of criticism, even if it was righteous. She ended one interview with somebody who was just asking very basic questions. It was a local. It wasn't like she went on Sean Hannity or she got interviewed by Glenn Beck. No. She got interviewed by like a local reporter, and it was horrible. And then there were reports from former staff that said that she's just a witch. They didn't use that word, but I do. She was just a witch and hard to work for, and always going after them. And then there was this leaked video where she's berating one of her staffers for something about the lights on the webcam, and I mean she's just not a very good person at all. Very much she's kind of your stereotypical Democrat, right? And right above her in third place is Eric Swalwell. Yes, the Chinese Communist Party's favorite member of Congress, old Fang Fang's boyfriend. Yes, that Eric Swalwell, the guy that, I mean, I don't like to get into personal attacks. Like there's this thing that Democrats have been doing for a long time. Oh, he's the most punchable guy. He's got the most punchable face. They say that about a lot of Republicans. I don't go down that road, but I will admit, if I ever got just personally starting to go after somebody because of how they make people feel and just the sleaziness and scumbaggery of them, it would be Eric Swalwell. This is a guy that I generally I don't like him, not just because of his politics. I don't like his personality. I don't like the way that he handles himself in pretty much any situation. I mean, he's just a tool. And those three are your top Democrat candidates for governor in California. That is arguably the biggest reason that we are here today, with them ranking third, fourth, and fifth, and with the two Republicans ranking number 1 and number 2 ahead of them. So the scenario would play out like this. If Democrats stay splintered, if they can continue to have this large array of possible gubernatorial candidates and none of them inspire, which none of them have so far, and we can assume that none of them will inspire. These aren't Gavin Newsom, okay? Gavin Newsom is, you can say all you will about him, but he's charming, I guess, is the politically charming in a way. That's why he's always been extremely successful at campaigning, even though he's been arguably the most disastrous individual politician in California history. I mean, you take it all the way through from San Francisco, tearing it down and making it what it is today when he was mayor there, to lieutenant governor and the whole high-speed rail debacle that's ongoing now, to locking down California and then going to the French Laundry to sit there and enjoy $1,000 meals with his buddies. That was, I mean, this guy's horrible, but he's good when it comes to running elections. He's not a great debater, and he definitely crumbles pretty quickly under the strain of any tough interviews. But otherwise, I mean, he's a good-looking guy. He's got a politician's smile. There's advantages to Gavin Newsom. Swalwell, Porter, Steyer, none of them have anything close to Newsom's charisma, and that plays to our advantage. So, how do we take advantage of that? Well, obviously, the most important part, well, not the most important part, the only way that this will work is if Hilton and Bianco stay at number one and number two. And I don't care who's number one or number two. As long as they stay in the top two spots, then California will be forced to have a Republican candidate. If they can win the primary, come in number one and number two, then I can see the state just going absolutely insane. You'll have Democrats apoplectic. They'll be doing postmortems the day after the primary election results come in. It's going to be crazy. And the funny part is that so far we haven't seen them unify behind any of their Democratic candidates. So I think they actually recognize that, wow, they all suck. They all suck really bad. And we need to do everything we can to play on that fact. And that means, at least from my perspective, you don't have to dig into it this much, but I'm going to be watching the polls, watching the trends, hearing, the reactions to various events. I know Katie Porter over the weekend, she made news by holding up a sign that said F Trump and trying to get the DNC, or not the DNC, the California Democrats riled up and yada yada yada, because that's the only message that the Democrats have anymore. Just F Trump. So we have to, but from my perspective, and if you are deeply embedded in media, we have to sort of hold back on attacking somebody to oblivion. In other words, like Tom Steyer, for example, he's at 9%. He's in 5th place. I'm not going to be attacking Steyer unless he's able to make a rise and get above Porter or Swalwell. They're number 3 and 4. I'm going to hold off on hitting Steyer. If he moves up, then I'll hit him. We've got to keep them sort of balanced in a way, right? And the same thing holds true for Republicans. I don't want either Hilton or Bianco to push past the other one. I don't want either of them to drop out before the primary. I don't want either of them to accelerate way above the other Republican. I'd like for them, if they split the Republican vote pretty evenly, and if Democrats split their vote between the three quote-unquote major candidates and all the other candidates, if we can keep those relatively balanced, then that gives the Republicans an opportunity to be number one and number two in the jungle primary, which means that it will be one or the other who wins the general election and becomes the next governor of California. That's the intent. We have to hammer Democrats as much as possible, but only the one that's in the lead amongst the Democrats. And then if we can tear that person down, then we move on to whoever jumps up. We want balance. We don't want anybody jumping ahead either on the Republican or the Democrat side. Of course, always, and this is never untrue, especially in midterm elections, always, we have to get the vote out. I mean, I need everyone who has a friend or a relative, or if you're living in California, anybody who can possibly vote Republican during the primary must do so. All of us have to do our part. All of us have to get out there and vote this time. And we need to get the word out to make that happen, because here's what happens out here in California. We get all excited. We hear about, oh my gosh, look, we got Larry Elder who's going to run. We got all these, great Republicans that are going to run. They never end up even getting close, usually. Now, that's part of that, at least. Maybe all of it. But somewhere between part and all of it is due to the fact that California is just rife with massive widespread voter fraud. And you might say, how do we overcome that? Well, that's not our job, right? I mean, it really isn't. We can't just sit here and say, oh, it's going to get stolen anyway. Why should we participate? We don't know what can happen between now and the primaries. We don't know if something can blow up or if somebody can get busted or if a whistleblower comes out there. We can't just go and assume that they're going to steal it anyway, so why should we get involved? Okay, that defeatist style attitude is ludicrous. We do our job. We get the vote out. We get every single possible Republican, Independent, anybody who's sick of Democrats destroying the state. We need to get them out to vote for either or. And again, at this point, I don't care. Talk about a stick in your head in the sand moment. I have intentionally not looked into the policies or histories or anything about either of the Republican candidates. I know that sounds naive or stupid or whatever, but honestly, I don't care. I don't care at this point. I really don't. I know I've heard enough negatives, enough baggage just in passing to know that neither Hilton nor Bianco are my ideal Republican candidate. Okay, neither of them are. But I'm not. I don't want to immerse myself in anything that says, "Oh, can't vote." Not this is a weird opportunity, folks. And I'm that guy. To be clear, I'm that guy that I will always, always support the patriotic, the most conservative, constitutionally minded candidate during the primaries when it comes to the Republicans, even if they don't have a chance to win. I'm that guy. Okay, like I push pretty much every time. I push as far to the right as possible. But I know the reality here in California is that neither of the candidates are going to be far enough right for me. So at this point, my focus is to make sure that we get one of them. And I don't care which one right now. After the primaries, if it's between the two of them, you betcha I'm going to do my research. I'm going to get them on my show. I'm going to interview them both. I'm going to do whatever I can to promote one or the other. And I'll even do my best to try to sway them. You know, there's one good thing about being out here in California is that it's not the one good thing. There's great weather too. So there's two good things. But one good thing about being a conservative in California is that the Republicans out here, the Republican leadership out here is very passive. In other words, you can sway Republicans once they get into office or even before they get into office pretty easily. You know, it's not like other states where the parties have far more control. And don't get me wrong, the Democrats definitely have control over, the Democrat leadership has control over the Democrat Party out here. But when it comes to the Republicans, they're just passive. I stopped going to Republican meetings. We used to have these Republican meetings at various places, and I'd go because they'd pick great places, barbecue joints and stuff like that. It's like, awesome. You know, can't wait to go. And I just got sick of it because it was just always so passive. Well, that's an advantage in this scenario. I do believe that if we can get the dream scenario of two Republicans winning the jungle primary and being the singular choice, in other words, there will only be the possibility of a Republican being the next governor, then I will go into hardcore. Let's get out in front of these guys. Let's figure out which one we like, and let's try to, number one, get them elected. Number two, mold them into the ideas that we want. Right? I mean, it's not hard. At least not out here in California. Again, Republicans. Look, I was involved in Republican politics in Oklahoma for a while, which is a lot more cutthroat than Republican politics out here in California. This place is a breeze by comparison. So that's where we stand, folks. The most important part was that number two, get the vote out. Get the vote out, get the vote out, get the vote out. There is hope. We cannot let that hope die. And is it still a long shot? You betcha. Okay, I'm not going to be naive and say, oh, look at the polls today. This is how it's going to play out in June, and there's not going to be any voter fraud, and none of the Democrats are going to be able to none of them are going to drop out, and no Republicans are going to hop in, and blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of bad things that can happen between now and June, between now and the primary. But there's also a lot of good things that can happen. And the most important good thing that can happen is that we're able to build hope to tell Republicans and independents and the Democrats that are, maybe in the closet about the fact that they know that the policies have failed this state, because they have. If we can get those people to have hope enough hope to not only go out there and vote, but also to encourage others to vote, that we might actually, for the first time in forever, see a Republican governor in the state of California. Imagine how grand that would be. And let's be very straightforward and honest about this. If it doesn't happen this time, I would almost guarantee that it will never happen again. If you're like me, you don't necessarily like to go to the doctor unless you absolutely have to. I know a lot of you out there don't go to the doctor at all. That's great. Some of you love to go to the doctor. That's great. We all have our preferences. Our medical needs are fulfilled. We live in a nation where, despite all of the challenges we have, we still have the best bad option when it comes to healthcare. But sometimes you know exactly what you need. You know, for example, if you need ivermectin, you know if you need antibiotics or UTI treatments or chronic meds or symptom relief medications. This is why we work with our fantastic partners over at Jace Medical. You can learn more about them and work with them by going to patriot.tv/meds. That's patriot.tv/meds. And you can pick up a whole bunch of things. They got tons of products now. And I know there's a lot of companies out there that offer similar products, but these guys have been doing it for a very long time. They are the OGs, so to speak, and they have been able to innovate and advance in ways that other companies simply can't. They get mimicked a lot, they get copied a lot, but you can't do better than what they have over at Jace Medical. Their Jace case, for example, has improved. It used to just be 5 antibiotics, and that's great. That was important. I've had 2 of them. But now they've added another 5 for symptom relief meds, vital symptom relief medications. Of course, the aforementioned ivermectin. They have kits for cruises if you're going on a cruise this summer. Man, so many different options they have. Go to patriot.tv/meds, patriot.tv/meds, and see how their telehealth system is able to work for you. They just send the meds to you via mail. It's awesome. And best of all, you don't have to go to the doctor. Pretty much every apocalyptic movie shows the people as being extraordinarily filthy. All of them. Bad hygiene that tells you that, hey, crap hit the fan. Now the world doesn't care if it stinks. But you should. Not so much about the odor, even though that is important. But there are distinct health reasons that you will want to make sure that you are prepared from a hygiene perspective. We'll be talking about that and more on today's segment of The Late Prepper. I'll admit, I love apocalyptic movies. One of my favorites, Book of Eli, definitely wasn't a perfect movie. The twist was a little cheesy, yada, 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 but I love Denzel Washington, and I thought it was good. I mean, and obviously it had the semi-biblical aspect. They always referred to it as the book. They didn't actually quote much scripture, except in the infamous fight scenes where he's about ready to slaughter everybody. If you haven't seen the movie, as long as you don't mind some strangeness and a little bit of bloody action combat, I'd say it's a pretty decent movie. And well, I'm not going to spoil it with the revelation of the King James Bible. So we'll just stop there before I do spoil it for anybody. Anyway, one scene in it, he's bartering. He's trying to barter, which I thought was very interesting, that the item that was most appealing to the shop owner that he's trying to barter with were wet naps. And I realized, oh, wow, that's great. That's beautiful. And then the greatest find that the bad guy is able to get and acquire through his men is shampoo. And his girlfriend, concubine, whatever, he shampoos her hair, and it was a very, you could tell that this was a truly joyous moment for her, and I could understand why. Hygiene is rarely at the top of people's list. We always have food, ammo, gold and silver or whatever. Water, of course. Meds sometimes makes the list. But hygiene is important because there are distinct, clear health reasons Okay, even for something that you think, oh, there's no reason to have deodorant. Well, no, there actually is. If you're listening to the show, you're probably not new to preparedness, but there are many of you who are. So if you're new, then then make sure to keep hygiene in mind. Thankfully, a lot of the items that you'll need for hygiene, you can get them, and they can rotate very easily. In other words, I got a ton of soap and a ton of deodorant, right? And what I do is when I take the soap, I'll take the oldest and then I'll replace it with new soap, and that way I've got just like I would do with food, just like you should do with other items that do expire, because unfortunately soap doesn't last forever, shampoo doesn't last forever, deodorant definitely doesn't last forever. They have shelf lives just like food. And so, storing them in a dry, dark, cool place is still recommended. But here's the thing, and we can call it hygiene. I look at it more as a medical supply, because if and when things happen, medically speaking, that's when hygiene and cleanliness and disinfectants, such as soap, are going to be extremely important. How much soap do you have? I'm not talking about body wash. I'm not talking about fancy scented nonsense. How much actual soap do you have? I know a lot of people that don't have any. Well, I don't know them, but I know there are a lot of people that don't have any soap at all. No bar soap. No, they might have hand sanitizer. They might have body wash. They might have a bar soap that's almost decorative, in their guest bathroom. But that's pretty much it, and that's a mistake. In a real grid down scenario, hygiene becomes a survival category. It's not a comfort thing. It's not just about, oh, got to get ready for work. It's about, okay, I have to survive, and I have to make sure my family survives. History is very clear about this. More people have died from infections and disease after societal disruptions than they have from violence or animals or even natural disasters themselves. So today we're talking about hygiene essentials that you'll need in the apocalypse, how long they last, how effective they are, and why in a collapsed economy they may become a powerful barter item. That's why I noted the whole Book of Eli thing. Let's start with the most obvious one. Soap. Yes, a plain bar of soap is one of the most underrated survival tools on Earth, and it should be fragrant free. The average shelf life is about 5 to 10 years. That's what they say if you store it in a cool, dry place. Realistically, it's almost indefinite. Okay, obviously it'll eventually dry out no matter what, but you can keep it for decades. And yes, it will become drier. It could crack, but we see that after, if it's exposed to air for weeks or months. But once you get it lathered back up, it returns back to semi-normal. It will lose some effectiveness over the years, but not enough. It doesn't become dangerous at any point, as far as I know. I don't want to say, oh well, after 5 decades, your soap will not become. I don't know. I've never tried 5-decade-old soap, but I have tried 7-year-old soap, and it seems to work fine. It works because it breaks down oils and lifts pathogens off the skin. It also can be used to clean wounds and stuff like that, if that is ever necessary. I wouldn't recommend that as the primary wound cleaning item, but it is effective if you're in a pinch. It doesn't need electricity. That's good. It doesn't need anything but really water. And if you do it right, it doesn't need a whole lot of water at all. In a grid down world, one clean family is less likely to get sick, less likely to get infections, skin disease, anything like that. And here's the kicker. A single bar of soap could become a barter currency. Now, here's a caveat, a warning. Today, if you don't have soap, then people can tell, right? They can smell you. In the apocalypse world, if you do have soap, people will be able to tell, because they won't be able to smell you, or they may smell the fragrance, which you shouldn't be using anyway. That means that you should be ready to, if you have enough, you should be ready to barter with it. And because it's going to be very, very highly desired amongst those who you will be dealing with but you won't be able to hide it. As a matter of fact, it's one of those things where it might be harder to hide your cleanliness from somebody that you're talking to than in today's world trying to hide your body odor if you're not using soap. You don't need body wash. I know some that'll be controversial for some, but just I don't use it now, so maybe I'm not a good expert on this, but I would strongly recommend against something, especially considering that bar soap does accomplish pretty much everything the body wash does. It just doesn't have the fragrance and doesn't have maybe the softening or moisturizing or whatever. But really, in an apocalypse, yeah, are you that concerned about that? You should be concerned about cleanliness first and foremost. Next, toothbrushes and toothpaste. And notice I said toothbrushes. My golly, I saw this guy. He had enough food to last like 10 years. He had everything that he could possibly need, and he had one toothbrush. Hello. I'm one. I replace my toothbrush like every few weeks. I'm sort of like that. But you can use a toothbrush for an extended period of time. And to be clear, they're also useful for other things which we won't be talking about today. But I have a relative, and maybe you do too. Maybe you know somebody. I think if you know people from the older generations, you'll probably know that there were times when people died semi-regularly from dental infections. You don't want that to happen. It's not just about tooth rot and tooth decay and the pain and the odor. It's also about a matter of life and death. So make sure that you have plenty of toothbrush and toothpaste available. The challenge is that with toothpaste, the shelf life is really short. We're talking 2 or 3 years before it really starts breaking down and losing its effectiveness. But again, we're not talking about it turning poisonous after 2 or 3 years. If you're using a fluoride toothpaste, then it's not going to be good. I would recommend, and I will recommend, not today, but I will do an episode on sort of apocalypse hacking here in the near future, where we'll talk about alternatives that maybe aren't just for the apocalypse, considering everything we're learning about fluoride and stuff like that. I'm just saying, maybe we should already be using alternatives. I know that I do. But most of you are still using fluoride toothpaste, and they do have a long shelf life. Technically speaking, you'll just get less effectiveness. So we'll see how that goes. In a collapse, there's no emergency dentist, unless you are a dentist, in which case you are the emergency dentist. But you still need equipment. It's not just, you get the idea. Untreated abscesses become life-threatening, right? So you want to keep your mouth clean and healthy as much as possible. Toothbrushes will become gold. They will. In a long-term crisis, you'll be able to they might be, actually, I wouldn't say might, I would say they almost certainly would be more valuable than certain food items, because people need it, and it's hard to replicate. Sure, you can use, I don't know, leaves or rags or something, but a good toothbrush is important. And here's the thing, just to keep in mind, when stockpiling things, toothbrushes, especially the cheap ones, are cheap. Even with today's inflation, they are pretty inexpensive. So stock up. Don't skimp on that. Not something to skimp on really ever, apocalypse or not. Next, feminine hygiene products. I'm not a female. I don't know much about them, and I really don't learn a lot about them, but my wife handles all that. Disposable products have a shelf life of about 5 years from what I've heard. Realistically, they too can last longer. Menstrual cups, medical grade silicone versions, they can last a decade, maybe more. In a crisis, these can become scarce instantly. And unfortunately, it's something that, depending upon how many women are in your family, it's not like you can sort of slow down or hold off. When it happens, it happens. And it is, again, a health necessity. In a crisis, these items can become scarce instantly unless you have just an absolute ton of them. I wouldn't recommend using them for barter. I really wouldn't, And again, if you do stock up and have tons, then I guess that wouldn't be so bad. but I mean a lot. Because again, we're not talking about something that you can just hold off on using. You will always need to use it. So next, wet wipes or baby wipes. I like this is the single instance in the world where I prefer the individuals over the bulk. You the little packets, right? Um, Normally, I'm a big fan of you get large containers that contain a lot of an item. The reason that I like the self-contained single containers, single packets of wet naps, is because uh, in a long-term situation, these can be very valuable. And anybody who's ever used baby wipes, you know that long-term, those big boxes with 100 baby wipes or 200 baby wipes or wet naps or whatever, that they can become number one, the liquid seems to seep to the bottom. The top can get very dry. Number two, you start to lose the effectiveness of them over time, even if they're sealed. The seals on them are usually very, very thin plastic versus with the individual sealed packets, they're actually pretty sturdy because they contain wet items. So that's why this is the one instance, this single product out there where I am a big fan of utilizing the single packet version. Their shelf life is 2 to 3 years normally. I think that you can keep them for longer, number one. And number two, especially if they're the individual packets. Number two, they can be rehydrated if necessary. So even though they do dry out, it's not like they're drying out the items in them, the soaps in them. They're convenient, right? But unless it's funny that they were noted or used in like a packet of single wet nap in Book of Eli was really sought after, right? And I think we'll see something similar if we're stuck in an apocalyptic situation like that, especially if it goes on for years or decades. During an early stage of collapse, these are going to be even more important. I wouldn't necessarily worry about trying to store them long term. Okay, what I mean by that is don't hoard them for 2 decades before cracking one open and finding out that they've turned to dust, or I don't know what's going to happen to them. I've never tested them out, but yeah, for short term, for the first few years of an apocalypse, they can come in very handy. And yeah, I think they would be great for bartering, even if only to recreate the scene from Book of Eli. Next, rubbing alcohol. Cannot stress this enough. And let's just say right off the bat, if you can only have two items, two items for hygiene, it would be rubbing alcohol and bleach, which I'll get to in a second. You can do without all the rest, even toothpaste. Okay, you can make toothpaste. You can't. It's a lot harder to make bleach. It's a lot harder to make rubbing alcohol, and they are so effective. Isopropyl alcohol, in particular, has a shelf life of around 2 to 3 years when sealed, but um, if you store it properly, and I'm talking like really store it well, really seal the container, even take a sealed container and wrap it nicely, make sure that you keep it in the appropriate storage conditions, dry, dark, cool, then yeah, they can last hopefully much longer. I don't know how much longer, but they can last longer. Now, a lot of people will say, well, I don't have a lot of rubbing alcohol, but I've got hydrogen peroxide, which can help with other things, such as even as like a dental cleaner, even though it destroys enamel, but that's a different story. The problem is that hydrogen peroxide degrades much faster than isopropyl alcohol. So having both is nice. If you can only have one, have the alcohol. Both are useful as disinfectants for wounds and surfaces, but the other added advantage for those who ever watch any prepper hacks, which we'll be doing more of those here on the show, the alcohol can be used as a fire starter. So that's good. Good stuff. Chlorine bleach, which I noted earlier, is the other thing that's an absolute must. It's an essential. Okay. The potency dies pretty quickly, even if it's sealed. I think you got about a year's worth before it starts to drop pretty rapidly. But it still has effectiveness even 5 or 10 years later, just not nearly as much. Now, this is going to be controversial. But there are certain things that have or certain um, chemicals that have similar properties that will last longer. One of them is calcium hypochlorite. It's pool shock. You ever have a pool? That's what that stuff is, and that has a much longer shelf life. But you got to be very careful. Got to know what you're doing, and I should probably do a much longer segment, or maybe even a full episode on that because yes, is it powerful? You betcha. Can it be very dangerous? Yes. Yes, it can. So, hand sanitizer, another controversial one. I am not a fan of it at all, but I know a lot of you are. My wife is. So, knowing that, I know that people, it's very popular, especially in bug out bags and things like that. So, we'll include it on the list. Not my recommendation, but I'm not the end all expert on this stuff. I do rely on others, and some people do say that it works really because of the shelf life. It's got a pretty decent shelf life. You can do the same thing with alcohol, but then again, one can make the argument that what, in a short-term situation, it's great because you don't want to bust open your alcohol uh, bottle just for washing your hands or disinfecting your hands. It's easier to have your hand sanitizer. So maybe I can warm to it. Maybe we'll see. It does not replace soap, though. Please, I know I've got an acquaintance who doesn't use soap at all, ever. Not even in the shower. Okay? This person uses hand sanitizer for pretty much everything, which is like, I don't even, ugh. Not a fan. But they are, you know what? Other people are big fans, and if you have that in the apocalypse, you betcha you'll be able to trade that for some ammo and food in a heartbeat. People would love that. Next, we got grooming supplies. Razors. Sealed razors will last indefinitely. Obviously, they don't have a shelf life. You don't want to let them rust, but you shouldn't be getting the razors that can rust. Then I'm not even going to dwell on that one. That makes total sense. We'll just leave it at that because you don't need to be told all of the potential uses of razors and grooming supplies. Laundry supplies. Now, a lot of people say, hey, go old school, go 19th century. The soap they use on their bodies is the same soap that they would use on their clothes and laundry and hair and everything. Fine, you can do that, but having powdered detergent is a good thing uh, because it's well, number one, it lasts pretty much indefinitely. There's no shelf life for laundry soap. Um, by its very nature, you take it, you add it to water, and it works. Okay, and you can use it. You can use a very little bit to wash a whole lot of clothes in a short period of time. So it does pose certain disadvantages. It's hard to transport. Okay, and I'm not a fan of liquid detergent, but the powdered stuff. We use liquid detergent in our washing machine today, but when it comes to the apocalypse, you'll want the powdered stuff, of course. Keeping your clothes clean isn't just about the smell. It's not just about, definitely not about the looks. It's about keeping them. A lot of things can grow. I don't know if you knew this. Hopefully, you don't know this because it's not common knowledge in today's society where most people do wash their clothes. But if anyone who's ever worked with the homeless, for example, I mean, you can get lice just from clothes. Okay, they become breeding grounds, and it's not just lice; it's other critters as well. Not to mention the attractiveness to bacteria and other microbials that can cling onto clothes and sweaty clothes, especially more easily than say just regular skin or clean clothes. Yeah, so don't forget the laundry supplies. All right, let's take a little break. When we get back, we're going to zoom out. We're going to talk about why this hygiene is important for more than just being clean and unstinky. So stay tuned. All right, let's talk about the importance of hygiene items beyond the obvious unstinkiness. It's not just a matter of comfort. Obviously, the need for sanitation is has been proven throughout history. I mean, it can determine survival rates in historical collapse scenarios. Roman Empire, war zones, refugee camps, homeless shelters, they have all been able to point to hygiene as one of the biggest reasons that people die. The difference between manageable hardship and spiraling death often comes down to your hygiene. But there's something that everybody misses, and I've touched on obviously with a lot of these points. But the barter element cannot be ignored. When food becomes scarce, it's valuable. We get it, but it's almost too valuable, right? I mean, it's something that you don't want to give away much of your food unless you have just strange surpluses of it that make sense to. I mean, if you got 100 buckets of rice for a family of three, that's going to last you for pretty much as longer than you'll be able to eat it all, right? And I'm not talking little buckets, I'm talking huge buckets, and that's also assuming that you have a bunch of other food, right? Then it makes sense. Then that can be a barter tool, but you really don't want to barter with that. You got meds. Meds are often much harder to acquire, or not often. They would be much harder to acquire in an apocalyptic situation. They can become another life or death item that you may or may not want to barter with. Now, we can talk about the shelf life, and I will talk about the shelf life of medications here in a future episode, but still not ideal. Not ideal. You know, you can look at regular items like tape and candles, and yeah, those can be good for bartering items, again, if you have a surplus. But when it comes to hygiene, it's the one that it just gets missed. It just gets missed by a lot of people. Even experienced survivalists often don't have enough hygiene supplies. So you can be, and let's say you got your survival community, right? Uh, Things go really, really bad. Crap really hits the fan, and now all of a sudden we're in one of those survival world. Like, for example, in the Postman. I didn't read the book, but I watched the Kevin Costner movie. It got a lot of flack, but I loved it actually. I'm not too proud to admit I actually loved that movie a lot. And they built these communities and built walls, and it looked like old school, right? Well, in those types of scenarios, being the hygiene guy, being the guy that's got plenty of soap and toothpaste and everything else, you will be the most popular barter person in your little village. Okay, bar soap, toothpaste, toothbrush, feminine supplies. These are the small ticket items that can not only create goodwill with your neighbors and friends, but it can also make you an economic powerhouse. In a barter economy, small divisible goods become currency. Silver coins will matter. Obviously, food will matter. Ammunition, would never trade any of it unless I got hundreds of thousands of rounds, right? Maybe not even then. But soap, sure. If you've got enough, then why not? As long as you can take care of yourself and your family, this crucial item can make you the most popular barter kid in the block. Store it properly. Store it in as I keep saying, dry, dark, cool places. Think long term. And remember something critical. Preparedness isn't paranoia. This is stewardship. A lot of times people will tell me, "Oh, if you're a prepper, you don't believe in the Bible and God and all this stuff." And we could talk about the whole, and actually I do on one of my other podcasts, talk about the whole pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib rapture. Is there a rapture at all? Are we going to go through hard times and yada yada yada? I'm a firm believer, biblically speaking, based upon the actual text, that regardless of what you label it or how you call it or which timeline you're looking at, that we as a people are going to go through hard times. Does that mean that we have to just submit to the powers that be, submit to government in order to survive, in order to retain our lives, and to be able to continue fighting the good fight, reading the gospel, spreading the gospel? No, I want to be the guy that's able to do it and not have to worry about what I'm going to eat, if I've got ammunition, and if I've got enough soap. So no, I don't see it as being, unfaithful or bad stewardship. It's good stewardship. you're supposed to store. Look at, I mean, again, you can go back to the Old Testament. It's the story of Joseph. It's not like, oh, well, God will provide without our interaction at all. That's not how life works. That's not how the Bible works. It's not how God works. You got to put in the effort, and you have to do what you can to be prepared so that you can continue to be a good steward, so that you can continue to fight the good fight. You prepare because you value life. You prepare because you want to protect your family. You prepare because civilization is thinner than most people realize. I was reading an article today about the risks of AI cyber attacks and how some of the smartest people out there are absolutely terrified of the quote-unquote big one. We've heard of the big one when it comes to earthquakes, which are another obvious possibility. But the cyber attack big one, the one that takes the grid out for extended periods of time, people say, well, even if the grid's down for a month, I can survive without internet or electricity for a month. Could you? You might be able to survive the actual loss of those utilities, but are you prepared to survive the chaos that ensues? That's the real question, because there will be chaos. We, as a society, have, Western society in general, and U.S. society in particular, our people are soft, okay? They are soft, and when they get desperate, they will do the craziest things. We saw just 5 years ago, they were willing to burn down portions of cities because some guy a criminal died with a cop having his knee on his back. Okay? We've seen people react insanely over ICE. It's like, we are willing to die to defend illegal alien rapists, murderers, and whatever. It's like, society doesn't make sense in that regard. So if things were to collapse, even for a short period of time, the collapse, I believe, would be sustained because of not necessarily the grid, that's the trigger, but because of the way that society itself responds to such things. We're soft. You might not be, I'm not, but as a society we are, and they will freak out. If we're late to understanding this, to realizing this, then, so be it. Start now. That's why I do this show. That's why it's called The Late Prepper. It's not too late yet, but perhaps someday soon it will be. Get your soap.
Freeze drying again?
Never know what could happen.
Whatever the future may bring, dinner can be certain.
Visit patriot.tv/harvest today.
Los Angeles is a total disaster zone, and I'm not talking about just the obvious problems such as homelessness and crime. It's culturally, it has deteriorated greatly. Politically, of course, after so long having Democrat mayors, Democrat governors, Democrat city councils, it's reaped the rewards of that. And of course, economically, you can't find a major city that's run as badly. And yes, that does include even New York City and Chicago, which are both facing their own fiscal issues. But Los Angeles is a bit different from other cities, other major cities in the U.S., in that its transition has been very spiritual in nature. There was a time, believe it or not, not too long ago when L.A. was very faith-driven. The population between evangelicals and Catholics, the population was still going to church. The population was still praying to God and reading their Bibles and and all that good stuff. And things have changed. It really has changed. I spent 3 months there with my wife, 3 separate months, to be clear. There's 1 month stays for medical reasons back, a decade or so ago. And it was already looking really, really bad. But now it's just, I don't want to say it's gone. I don't want to say that it's irredeemable. I don't want to say that the degradation is irreversible, because I do believe, obviously, in God, in Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. So I know anything's possible. It could be fixed. It's as long as it's still there, which it is for now, then it can be fixed. But it will take, I believe, an act of God to reverse the turmoil, the just ugliness and dirtiness of the city. And when I say ugliness and dirtiness, I'm not talking about the appearance or the filth, the physical filth. I'm talking about from a spiritual perspective. But today we're going to highlight three stories, three stories in this segment of truth-based media. These stories aren't the biggest ones surrounding LA, but they are indicative of the day-to-day challenges faced by Angelenos, faced by those even in the surrounding areas that are having to reap the rewards of Democrats and leftists just demolishing this once proud city. All of that on today's segment of Truth-Based Media. The city of Los Angeles always seems to find a way to screw things up. I mean, I've been out here in California for nearly 2 decades. Southern California is a beautiful place. There's lots of great reasons to live here. Well, there's the weather. I guess that's the only really, truly great reason. The food's good. Food's pretty good out here. Good seafood. Outside of that, I'm not sure if there's really a reason. I'm not big on access. I don't go to concerts anymore, and I'm not infatuated with any celebrities, so I'm just stuck out here for medical reasons. But that's a whole other story. The story that we're going to be talking about right now happens to do with the homeless situation in Los Angeles, and a screw up by the city, trying to clean it up. Is a rare effort that was actually going to try to do something about it, and they failed miserably because they can't read or they can't understand the law, apparently. This story comes from John Sexton over at Hot Air. It says LA County judge blocks plan to clear out homeless RVs. Now you might be thinking, oh, is it just going to be another story about some woke judge that's protecting the homeless out there, trying to keep the city from cleaning up. But no, this really legitimately is LA's fault. See, there was a law that was passed that allowed for 2 jurisdictions to be able to clear out what's being called RV camps, broken down RV camps. We're not talking about the places where people actually go and camp out. You drive your RV up. Those are great, right? Now, these are really permanent residences made out of broken down RVs. If you haven't seen one, I wouldn't recommend looking at them because they're often disgusting. Seriously, truly disgusting. I would argue worse than, in many ways, the various tent cities around blue states in this country where they pile in tents and turn it into a mess. With the RV aspect of it, or vans converted into sleeping quarters, sure, they're better off. The homeless people in them are better off because they're more protected from the elements, more protected from each other, from crime. But then there are many other challenges associated with it, especially when they become permanent. According to the article, Los Angeles has a serious problem with homelessness, and a significant number of those homeless people live in broken down RVs. The city of LA recently made an effort to clean up some of those RVs and put the people living in them into shelters, but a judge has shut down those efforts. The judge struck down the latest effort by the city of Los Angeles to tow and destroy broken down recreational vehicles, handing a legal victory to a group of West Side homeless advocates. In a 2-page ruling, Superior Court Judge Curtis A. Kinn said Los Angeles officials lack the legal authority to carry out a state law that permits the dismantling of abandoned or inoperable RVs. Assembly Bill 630 allows just 2 jurisdictions, Los Angeles and Alameda counties, to create programs for taking apart and ultimately discarding RVs that are worth up to $4,000. The judge said AB 630 provides no such authority to the city of Los Angeles. So LA, they put together this plan. They're going to go out there and clear out these RV cities, which is really what they are. With the total comes to about 14,000, to be clear, which is shocking in itself. 14,000 of these. They're going to go and try to clear them out, right? They're dangerous, they're disgusting, and the people that are living in them aren't necessarily getting any better off than they would if they got help. And I'll talk about that here in a second. But they didn't read the law. The law didn't give them the power to do that. Sure, I get it. Los Angeles City, the city of Los Angeles, is inside the county of Los Angeles, but it's not all of it. In LA, the city does not have the authority to do this because, of course, in California, they make the laws so odd that even trying to play by the law can be difficult. This one was not. All they had to do was say, okay, let's work with the county to make this happen. Instead, they decided, yeah, we're going to do it ourselves as a city, and then the judge shot them down, and rightly so. Again, whether you agree with the law or not, the law is the law, and only 2 jurisdictions were given this power, and the city of Los Angeles was not one of those jurisdictions. So now they're back to the drawing board. It's going to be held off for however long, could be months, probably be years, before this is addressed again properly. But here's the thing, and I am a big fan of 2 things that seem contradictory, but they're not. On one hand, I do believe that homeless camps are dangerous. They put the people around them in danger. I've been through Skid Row. I've lived in LA. I've been through some of the worst areas of LA. These are dangerous places. And not just for the people living there. They're dangerous for the communities. They need to be cleared out, period. Okay? With that said, the methodology behind how they're cleared out and how the people are helped is absolutely positively incorrect. There's a reason why the homeless industrial complex is thriving in blue cities across the nation, blue states as well. And it's not because of their desire to help the homeless. It's because the money, massive amounts, millions, billions of dollars that are sunk into homelessness prevention, homelessness, the cities and states that are trying to quote unquote stop homelessness, they don't use the money for that. This is the ultimate government money laundering scheme. I've talked about this in the past. I wish I would have had my other shows ready to play clips from, because we've dug into this, and other people have dug into it even more. And we realize that when you're dealing with something that is it's so hard to trace, Democrats have determined, wow, this is a total black hole. We could sink tons of money into this, as they do here in California, sink tons of money into it, and claim that homelessness is being addressed when it's not. They just form these companies or hire their cronies. It's like, okay, so you're going to go and provide meals for the homeless, right? I'm just using a random example. And they say, okay, so we're going to pay you $30 per meal that you deliver. And what ends up happening is, instead of a $30 meal, they're getting like crackers and a bottled water that'll cost them like $4. They're handing those out, and they're saying, oh yeah, we handed out 5,000 when they only handed out 300, and there's no way to track it. No way to say, no, you didn't. Oh, yes, we did. We claim we did. Prove us wrong. And that's a very simplistic example. There's a lot more complex ways that they utilize this homelessness industrial complex to launder money to their cronies and to themselves. And this is rampant. Which brings me to the point of all this. We do need to help the homeless, but not through government. We do need as Americans to be charitable to our veterans, to the children, to the even those who are in the situation because of their own doing. They did nothing but get addicted to drugs or get addicted to crime or whatever. These are still human beings, and they still do need our help, but not through government, not through taxpayer dollars. This must be an effort that's committed by the people. And there are plenty of homelessness charities out there. They need to be built up. This is where the focus needs to be. And I would argue that a lot of what we rely on government to do should be handled by the private sector. The money can be spent far better. And I'm not saying that all charities are good. There's a whole other rabbit hole we can go down as far as charitable fraud. The whole charity industry, much of it is just as corrupt as government, sometimes even more corrupt than government. I'm not suggesting that there aren't ways to game that system, but I will trust a properly motivated, good-hearted, preferably a Christian charity to truly serve as the homeless, to truly try to help them to be lifted up, to be given the treatments that they need. If they have addiction, if they have mental illness, let's address the issue. Let's not just go out there and say, okay, we're going to take down your RV and put you into a homeless shelter and mandate this and paperwork that. No, let's just figure out how to help our fellow men and women and children from, at the very least, a charitable perspective, preferably from a Christian perspective. Churches should be leading the charge when it comes to addressing the homeless problems in their community. That's how it was done before. That's how it has been done for centuries. It's always been the duty of the church, even the earliest church. Read Acts, rather. That was what they were supposed to do. That was one of their missions, was to help the poor, help those who are hungry, help those who don't have shelter. This is our duty, not the government's. Government took it over, and perhaps at some point there were good intentions, but today it's a black hole for corruption, and that needs to be reversed immediately. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass is an idiot, and her city has become a cesspool, not just because of her watch. She did inherit a cesspool, so let's acknowledge that. But with that said, ever since the Pacific Palisades fires destroyed homes, it's become more and more and more and more evident that the city just doesn't know how to handle, well, anything at all. This latest move is one that I'm actually almost speechless, because there's something about this, and I'll explain after I play this clip from Fox News, but there's something about this that really reeks of the ultimate version of government corruption. Let's see if you catch it. Listen to this.
This is one of the properties where the owner received one of those bills, and you can see they don't feel like there's a whole lot of brush back here, mostly just dirt, and they're angry. In fire-devastated Pacific Palisades, another punch to the gut for families struggling to recover.
It's one final blow, after they screwed us over, they're still trying to take money.
Almost 14 months since the deadly fire, and some residents are now receiving bills like this from the city of LA, charging them $31 for alleged non-compliance with brush clearance rules.
I was a little astonished because there's no house and there's no brush.
Even on lots like Carol Sanborn's, where her home of more than 40 years was wiped away.
Well, I do know of several other people who've gotten the notice, and a lot of people are just angry about it.
Everything that you've lost, $31 is...
It's nothing, but, I'm not paying it. It's the principle of it.
Other neighbors also receiving the fines for brush clearance. So where's the brush?
There isn't any, really. It's mostly dirt.
Christine Martinez with construction almost done.
I'm sure they didn't come out and inspect it, because there's nothing to be in compliance or out of compliance for.
So on the bill it says to call this number if you have any questions about the invoice. Let's give it a try.
The mailbox of the person you are calling is currently full and cannot accept new messages. Please try your call again later.
So residents with questions about their bill can't even leave a message because it says the mailbox is full.
Their voicemail is full. Can't leave a message. So the next thing was they said to write. So I wrote. That was last week. I haven't heard anything.
Are you going to pay it?
No, have no intention of paying it.
Carol writing back to the city this letter with red ink.
I wrote, this is insulting and cruel. We have no house and we have no brush.
A spokesperson for the mayor's office says they're working with LAFD to look into these fines.
I'm starting to believe they don't want us back.
Well, many say they're not paying the fee out of principle.
It's disappointing to get something like this and feel that somehow the city's working against you instead of with you.
Reporting in Pacific Palisades, Matthew Seedorf, Fox 11 News.
LA Mayor Karen Bass's office provided us with a statement saying, "This is unacceptable. No resident who lost their home in the Palisades should receive this charge." The mayor's office is in contact with LAFD.
Karen Bass. So, did you catch it? Did your alarm bells go off the way that mine did? They said, oh, yeah, that one lady saying it's $31, it's nothing. I'm not going to pay it out of principle. And they've got the number where people can call and complain. And then you have the one lady. There's one lady that really hinted at what I believe to be call it a conspiracy if you want, but I think it's pretty blatant, where she said there's no way they sent somebody out to inspect these, especially considering, and you couldn't see it, obviously, if you're just listening to the podcast, but in the video, you could see that there was barely any brush at all. There's no way that somebody looked at this devastated lot where there is no longer a home, and they're like, this non-home needs a brush violation because there's like a bush somewhere in the sea of dirt that was sitting there at that lot. And this was across the board. It wasn't just her, but she's the one that noted that it seemed like nobody even came out to inspect. And therein lies what to me is the ultimate in government corruption. And this happens more often than I believe very many of us even realize. It's the non-consequential taxation, billing, fines, whatever you want to call it, where they just throw out, they decide, hey, you know what, we need some funds. Let's throw out a blanket, obscure, whatever, in this case, brush violation, that'll collect a little bit of money. The vast majority of people, even if they disagree, they're still just going to pay it because it's the government sending them a notice that they owe money. It's not a lot of money, okay? At least for a lot of people in LA. It's not a lot of money, so it's like, do I really want to fight it? Do I want to call? Do I probably have to hire a lawyer or fill out paperwork or go downtown? It's just $31, I'll pay it. And that's what ends up happening. Most people pay it. And if anybody complains, they say, hey, I got this notice in the mail and it says that I owe this. And it's like, okay, I guess, send us a picture and we'll eliminate the fine. And what is that? Less than 1% of the people that receive these notices will actually do that. Otherwise, people will either not pay, in which case they incur more fines, or they'll pay it. And what ends up happening, what are the repercussions from this? How do you prove that oh no, there was no brush here and this is a travesty? And it's like, no, it's subjective. It's like, see, there's green. They consider that a brush, or oops, I guess that it was our mistake. Sorry, got your address mixed in. You're one of the good guys, or whatever. I would argue that if you did an audit and found out who did not receive a brush violation, you would learn that there was nobody who didn't. That everyone in a particular area, every single address, received that same violation. And millions of dollars are being collected in this fashion all the time. And I'm not going to point out that, oh, this is only a Democrat thing. It's only happening in blue cities. But did you ever notice that you don't hear about these types of things in Republican-led cities? I mean, seriously. And not that there's very many of them in the United States anymore, but they do exist. And you don't hear about crap like this. Why? Because it's dishonest. Because this is why people hate government. amongst 1,000 other reasons. I'm disgusted, and here in this scenario, you see Karen Bass saying, "Oh, this is unacceptable. No resident should have lost their home. We're going to look into it." But nothing's going to happen. There's going to be a new set of brush violations, or your mailbox is too close to the road, or your paint is out of compliance, or whatever. They spend so much money. They get themselves into huge budget deficits, like in LA. Despite collecting so much in taxes, it's like they spend. They can't figure out how to tax anymore, so they find these alternative taxes, such as brush violations. It's sick, it's corrupt, it's illegal, but unfortunately, it's just very hard to prove. All right, one last story about Los Angeles, and then I'll stop picking on them. They're just too easy of a target. But this story comes to us from CBS News. Los Angeles pulls PSA that was urging riders to not poop on city buses. Try to make it up. Try to make this stuff up. This is an article by Matthew Rodriguez over at CBS News. The Los Angeles Department of Transportation has pulled public service announcements videos asking riders to refrain from pooping on city buses. The videos were part of their PSA campaign called "If You See Something, Do Something About It." What, you're supposed to beat up a bus pooper? I'm not sure what they're asking there. The campaign featured 6 different videos. 6 videos. They didn't just do one. They did 6 of these to make sure they really hammered home the point. Campaign featured 6 different videos urging riders to report disturbing behavior, including smoking, drinking, fare evasion, and loud music, and, of course, pooping. After seeing the PSA, CBS LA tried to contact LA DOT and ask if there was an ongoing issue of people pooping on city buses. It did not return any calls or emails asking for comment. Shortly after the messages, LA DOT removed the videos from its YouTube channel and website. A day after CBS LA published the story, an LA DOT spokesperson responded to us saying the videos were not intended for viewing on the website and had been removed from the webpage. What was it, just like internal? I mean, it's like we made these videos. These were public service announcements that were not meant to be viewed by the public. That's their story. Versus the reality, which is like, oh crap. We did something wrong here. This is not the attention that we really wanted to get. Let's cut that one. Go fire the intern that came up with that idea. Spokesperson said the See Something, Do Something videos are intended for onboard viewing to inform riders how to report crappy behavior or negative experiences. They actually had to say crappy behavior. How it's not funny. It's not funny at all. It's sad. LA DOT asks riders to report any incidents to their staff via their website or by email. They can also call the number. Officials asked riders to include the route, the date, and the time. Wow, makes sense. They're really trying to cut down on the crap. This is, folks, this is stereotypical LA. Okay, this is peak Los Angeles right now. It's not just Karen Bass. It's not just the very extremely woke city council. It's not just Gavin Newsom. It's not just California. This is a representation of the direction that the nation is going, especially under Democrat rule. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, Republicans are perfect. Republicans are great. Republicans are feckless for the most part in government. I have all sorts of complaints about them as well. But in this situation, when we look for debacles, that's what Los Angeles has become. And this city has such a strong history in both directions. We've seen some of the best and some of the worst. You can say the same thing about LA and Chicago. Dallas, Phoenix, all of the big cities, they have extreme good and extreme bad at times. But LA, for whatever reason, you could blame it on the politics, you could blame it on the culture, you could blame it on the lack of faith, which is what I really, truly attribute all this to. But Los Angeles has become a perpetual joke, a perpetual debacle. You can't tell me anything that they've truly done well. for a long time. We've been going through the dark times of LA for years, maybe decades now. And it shouldn't be like this. This is again, I'm not trying to just say, oh, it's all the Democrats, it's all the Democrats. No, I would say it's a combination of, yes, the bad politics that have been rampant for a very long time, the degradation of culture, which has been ongoing in LA since really the 90s. I think LA started hitting its peak of certain levels of positivity in the 80s, and then it started by the mid to late 90s. It really started deteriorating badly. It pace similar to what was happening in New York. I think New York was able to make it an extra decade. So where LA is now is where New York City is heading. And as far as Chicago, don't even get me started with that. That's a different story altogether. But when it comes to LA, I would say that perhaps the biggest problem is that the city has become so averse to the Christian faith. This is a city that for a long time, even the quote-unquote Democrats and leftists were at least still very proud of their attachment to their faith. It was a city, relative to other cities in California, LA did have a strong adherence to Christian faiths or Catholicism. And that has been slipping away. It's been getting chipped down, chiseled down for a very long time. And the results are what we're seeing today. It might seem funny, but it is a reality that you can't get on a bus in LA. And I wouldn't recommend ever getting on a bus in LA unless you absolutely had to, but you can't get on a bus in LA without the potential that somebody took a dump on it.